Natasha Williams, N-A-T-A-C-H-A.
N-A-T-A-S-H-A.
Thank you. Spell your last name.
Williams, W-I-L-L-I-A-M-S.
And my name is Helen Z. Willis. I represent District 3, H-E-L-E-N, Z, middle initial, Willis, last name, W-I-L-L-I-S. And I have with me Mr. David Roseborough, and he is the president of the IAFF Local Union 3920, and he represents our fire union here in the city of South Fulton. Again, I am with gratitude and honored that I was elected by the residents in District 3 in 2017 and re-elected in 2019 to serve as council member to represent our community here in the city of South Fulton. The city of South Fulton was established in 2017 by an act of the Georgia State General Assembly and a majority vote of the residents. The motivation of becoming a city was to have local control. The city was established in 2017 as stated, and we were mandated by our state charter to transition all of our services from the county over to the city within a 2-year period. I want to explain and give you this background because it was reported that we have a high turnover in the city manager role, and we have had 3 city managers, and that's not true. We, as the new incoming council, we were recommended by the transition team with an interim city manager. The sole purpose of that interim city manager was to transition services from the county over to the city. After that was done, that interim city manager stayed over maybe a year and a half, and then we appointed our first permanent city manager, and that was done in 2019. That city manager stayed with the city a little under 2 years and then got elevated and decided to move on to a better role in Augusta, Georgia as a city manager. So our then, at that time, assistant city manager was appointed by the current mayor, not this current mayor, but the current mayor at that time, to the role of permanent city manager. And that person is still serving in the role of city manager. We have a city council form of government, and I'll tell you what that means in a minute. But for me, I want you to know, I diligently serve in my role with all my heart, soul, passion, understanding that neither am I perfect, and at times I can be very passionate, and I don't claim to be perfect. I can say things with a lot of passion and determination. All of my comments that I was accused of making was only in the vein of getting things done for my community that needed to be done after sending emails that I have documented for years. I have some emails that go back to 2 years. I have not gotten timely responses as it relates to litter in my community, as it relates to public works in my community, as it relates to recreation centers in my community that have been closed and haven't been able to respond to residents why they have been closed and when they will be open. There are CDRA erosion issues in my community, and some of these emails go years of no answers. I have documented emails that show all of this being done. Throughout the past several years, staff has been rumbling about city's finances and how they have been treated by directors and how their voices are unheard. As we have endeavored to verify what we heard, unfortunately, we've been working to do our due diligence to verify these claims. But unfortunately, individuals preempted a smear campaign and publicly revealed an internal document that was not released by our city open record request process to muddy the waters. We never intended to stand before you today. Residents have been calling for us to work out our issues internally. And that's what my colleague and I committed to do. Unfortunately, when the story was leaked to the media and on social media, Friday, February 10th, it forced us to publicly defend ourselves and give more context to what was released. At the same time, there are many things that we can't disclose at this time because our fiduciary responsibility is to make sure we maintain certain confidence until it's time to reveal certain things. But I will begin by addressing publicly allegations of creating a hostile work environment. What I have in my possession, and I can speak about this now because when those allegations were made about a hostile work environment towards me and my colleagues, several former employees reached out to us, and we have documentation that go back to 2021 of employees who have filed grievances, of employees who have sent emails directly to staff complaining that the work environment was hostile. They did not feel that their complaints were addressed properly. We have a healthy workplace and other lawful purpose ordinance that requires for a grievance board to be formed so that grievances can be heard. They did not feel that their concerns were properly addressed, and they weren't given that opportunity to go before a grievance board and have their concerns heard for the ones who have filed complaints. Between the months of November 22nd and February 6th, we have lost several employees due to resignations. Several of the employees feel that they were forced to resign. I will provide to you a list of employees with their phone numbers because several of them are willing to come forward and speak to you, media, so that their voices can be heard. I would like to also add behind me, and you can ask questions of him, is our firefighters labor union. Now, in 2020, I led a legislation supported unanimously by the council to form a fire union. The sole purpose of that was to make sure that our firefighters get paid fair wages and have better working conditions. There was a huge disparity between our firefighters' pay and our police pay. So the firefighters asked me to allow them or to lead legislation for them to establish a union. And I did that. As a result, we, the city council, we approved a historical collective bargaining agreement that outlines pay that will bring them up to industry standard and also give them fair working conditions. I have received several complaints from the union that agreement is now in jeopardy of not being upheld, and I will allow them to speak to that. I am going to close at this time and turn this press conference over to my colleague so she can talk about some of the finance concerns. But what I want to say is that I want to see our city continue to grow. We have so much opportunity here. We went from a $50 million budget to now a $200 million budget. In my district alone, I have gotten over $3 million in investment to the parks. There are new businesses coming to my district. I love my community, and I know majority of them love me. I would not create a hostile work environment. I have been quiet for a very long time because I wanted us to work this out internally. I want employees to know that we appreciate them. And if anyone else needs to come forward, please do come forward so that we can resolve these issues. Again, these employee complaints and grievances go back to 2021. I have nothing personal against the city manager. As a matter of fact, my colleague and I, when she was wrongfully requested to resign, we stood by her side. We stood by her side because we felt like she deserved a chance to do her job. Unfortunately, we are here now, and I'm very disappointed that a passionate comment that was not meant in a malicious way was taken out of context and used against me to smear my name and my character. The city deserves better than that. We are better than that. And let's continue to move in a vein that the residents want us to. And that is working out our internal differences internally and presenting a united front so we can move this city forward. Thank you so much. And at this time, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Councilmember Natasha Williams. And then you got Davis.
So good afternoon, and happy Valentine's Day. I am confident that this is not how any of us expected to be spending a day of love. However, there are moments in time when it becomes necessary to speak. As my colleague, Councilwoman Willis, has stated, we have been endeavoring for some time now to verify many of the claims and allegations and the rumors and the innuendos that have been flying around the city, and particularly on social media, and specifically on Nextdoor. If you know anything about what it takes to verify information, it is a slow and it is an arduous process. And our process has been significantly hindered because while there have been multiple, almost daily, allegations against the council of things that we are doing, they have not been put in their proper context, nor has any of the rest of the information surrounding it been released. And I pause here to note that we do have a resident from District 1 passing out information to the media today, and I do have information for you as well. Information that he should not possess. Last year, when I was sworn in, one of the first things that happened is a resident came to council meeting and called for a forensic audit. Allegations were made but no documentation and proof was forthcoming. If you know anything about the audit process, you cannot audit rumor, innuendo, and allegation. If people say that something has happened, they need to come forward with documents to prove that it has happened. We are a big city with a lot of moving parts, and we cannot spend our time chasing down unsubstantiated allegations. Since that time, we have been endeavoring to the best of our ability to do that. And as we have done that, the attacks and the smear campaigns have increased to the point where they are now a daily deluge of misinformation. However, there are some things that I can share on today and give you copies of, so that rather than have to rely on what individuals want you to believe about what is happening, you can have the documents and ask these questions yourselves. First, we were told or had heard that last summer the finance director was allowed to purchase a $40,000 SUV without going through the procurement process and under her signature alone. It has taken some time to verify that information. However, now I do have a copy of that order and of the requisition showing that, in fact, she was allowed to violate the procurement process and purchase a SUV from Wade Ford in the amount of $40,000, $40,840. Her name is the only name on the requisition as approving this purchase. We have recently been put on notice by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in the wake of a memo sent to the city on January 24th, and that has yet to be disclosed to this council by the city's leadership and management, that, and I quote, "There are concerns over the late submission of plans, reports, and status of the fiscal year 22 annual action plan. In addition, community planning and development is concerned with staff capacity and lack of eligible projects submitted to the integrated disbursement and information system. The city has not drawn any funds from the fiscal year 21 and fiscal year 22 grants. The city of South Fulton currently has a balance of $512,225 and $466,408 for the fiscal year 21 and 22 grants, respectively. As part of their communication, they asked to schedule a meeting with leadership. When Councilwoman Willis attended the meeting, the only question that was asked of the HUD representatives, that is not a fair statement. One of the questions that was asked of the HUD representatives was, how did Councilwoman Willis know that there was a meeting? Residents have been asking about audits. Where is the audit? What has happened to the audit? I want to say that first, we have received a preliminary draft of the P-card audit that the city commissioned last year. We are waiting on the finalized version, but I have no doubt that you all will receive a leaked version of that draft before we are able to get the final and publish it ourselves. Or rather, I should say, you will receive the pieces of it that people want you to receive. But once that is finalized, it will be forthcoming. However, what we do not have is the fiscal year 21 audit. And much like you, we have been asking this question for some time. Where is the fiscal year 21 audit? It has only been in the past several days, about 30 at this point, where the finance director finally responded to our questions saying, and I quote, "We are still working on the 2021 and the 2022 hasn't started just yet. With the 2021, there has been an issue with reconciling about $1.9 million in CARES money and finding the documentation. The current grants manager is working with payroll now to tie down the last bit of information." We will be following up on this to try to understand how it is possible to not be able to reconcile $1.9 million in federal grant funding. We have as well been asking about the budget book. For those residents who have been emailing and calling wanting to know why the budget has not been posted yet, the budget has not been posted because, and I quote, "Currently, staff is working with external affairs to get this document completed. Finance has provided all the required information, but external affairs was working to get it set up properly with pictures and formatting the printer. Once a digital copy is available, I will make sure to send it out to everyone and have it posted on the city website." We are still waiting. Now, this may seem to be something trivial until you know that the state legislature authored HB 122 requiring all cities to submit their budget as well as their audits to the Carl Vinson Institute within 30 days of adoption. At the time that I was given this information, it was not posted. When I asked if we were in compliance with state law, I did not get an answer. I subsequently reached out to the Carl Vinson Institute and was informed that the budget had indeed been submitted on January 26th, 3 days after I inquired, and well past the 30-day deadline required by state law. And then finally, we have become aware, if any of you watched the council meeting on January the 24th, you know that this council, by a 4-3 vote, voted down issuing a $32,000 a month no-bid contract to a preferred vendor that would have outsourced the majority of our CDRA functions. What we did not know at the time, but now know, is that the CDRA director had submitted to leadership the plan that we requested in September to transition building inspections into the city and away from the contractor we were using. I know many of you in the media received complaints from residents about the quality of their homes and how they were built. And we've been endeavoring to address that. as we should according to the charter. It turns out that the CDRA director did, in fact, submit the plan that we requested, and leadership withheld it from the council twice, only to replace it with this $32,000 a month contract to try to get the council to go back to the vendor that we had contracted with before, rather than implement the plan that we requested. When leadership became aware that we were, in fact, at the point of having accurate and thorough documentation, the smear campaign began. Things that I said, things that Councilwoman Willis said, were taken out of context, put into a letter written to be incendiary, and designed to be leaked and released to all of you. From my perspective, this is nothing more than an attempt by employees who know that we can now and will continue down the pathway of understanding what exactly is happening in the city, to derail the conversation, to muddy the waters, and to turn your attention to what myself and Councilwoman Willis said, and away from the facts that lay before us in the documents that I will provide. I would like to add that if there is anybody who would like to have the full email of what I said, I am happy to provide it so that you can read the full conversation and not the 6 words that people want you to see. And before I turn this over to our union president, let me be very clear. I was elected by the residents of District 6. Much like Councilwoman Willis, I serve my district with dignity, honor, and professionalism. And I will continue to do so so long as the residents say so. And nobody from a district outside of District 6, no employee, no elected official, no appointed official is going to bully me into doing anything except the job that I was elected to do. And with that, I will bring to the podium our firefighters union president for further comments regarding the collective bargaining agreement. And yes, and then we will take questions.
So first, good afternoon. I want to thank the council members for allowing me to speak. My name is David Roseborough. I'm president of IAFF Local 3920 Firefighters Union in the city of South Fulton. In June, as was stated before, the collective bargaining agreement was signed by this city council and entered into between the city and the firefighters union. Since that time, we've had multiple breaches in our contract that was addressed, and we had brought that to the attention of the city. However, the city manager has designated the fire chief as the decision maker for this collective bargaining agreement. During that time, the latest breach in contract was a cost of living adjustment that was given to all full-time city employees. However, the fire chief decided that firefighters within the city would not receive the cost of living adjustment because of our collective bargaining agreement. Our collective bargaining agreement made no such mention of us being excluded from receiving these monies. When it was brought to his attention that the collective bargaining agreement actually includes us on that cost of living adjustment, the fire chief then responded that we should obtain an attorney and talk to the city, to respond to the city. The fire chief, supported and empowered by the city manager's inaction, has failed to comply with the terms in our collective bargaining agreement. The union is asking the city and this city council to support the firefighters in rectifying these hardships caused by the fire chief and the city manager. We also ask that we build trust once again from where we left off in June between the firefighters and this city. We have a low morale right now in the firefighters in the city of South Fulton. And firefighters' families were hurt during that time because this cost of living adjustment was given out during the holidays, and we were the only ones excluded. I also have documentation of all our responses if anybody wants to reach out, and I want to thank the City Council once more.
At this time, we're entertaining questions, any questions that you all may have.
From credentialed members of the press.
If the issues with the CARES Act funding seem to stem from problems within the finance department, why does it seem like it's being shifted to the city manager? What is the role of the CARES Act funding? Shouldn't it just be on the finance director?
It should be on the finance director, but you also have to understand that the city manager is the chief administrative officer of the city. And per our charter, she is the only person that we can hold accountable. She is responsible for all operations in the city. And at the point where they were not able to reconcile this funding, the city council should have been alerted to the problem so that we could have begun to address it and take the necessary steps to identify what happened. Rather than do that, it appears on its face that there has been a concerted effort to keep this information from the council and to keep us from being able to act accordingly and appropriately to the situation. For that, the only person we can hold responsible is the city manager. And that is based on the structure of our charter, which prohibits us from talking to any other staff member unless the city manager gives us permission to do so. And so we are holding the employee accountable that the charter says we can hold accountable.
I just want to make one correction. The charter does allow us to talk to employees, but we have to communicate what we discuss to the city manager. The section that my colleague, Councilmember Williams, is referring to in the city charter that outlines the duties and responsibility of the Chief Administrative Officer is Section 3.25 of the city charter. The city manager is a full-time chief executive officer and the city of the city and is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city. And that has been stated several times to council members when we have questioned and requested for updates.
What is it that you are wanting to see done? Are you wanting to see the city manager and possibly other staff resign or come apologize or what?
So what we want to be able to do is to continue the process that we began so that we can do what we need to do in decency and in order. The only reason that we are standing here today is because a personnel memo was inappropriately leaked to the news in what has now become a very familiar pattern of information that should not be publicized getting out and being weaponized to attack the council. What we would like to do is continue our work unimpeded and uninterrupted. And everyone else involved can make whatever decision they wish to make as to how they would like to conduct themselves. But for our purposes, we want to continue our work.
Helen, I have a question. On Friday, the city manager said, when I asked her to respond to what you all had said, same thing that you're saying today, she said that she's following all city policies and procedures, and I imagine that's what she'll say today, I'm not sure. But can you respond to that she is doing her job?
If she was following all policies and procedures, then number one, she would have adhered to, again, Section 3.25 of the Charter, which states explicitly that one of her job duties is to keep the city council advised as to the financial status of the city. That has clearly not been done.
Councilwoman Willis, you said not perfect and your words were taken out of context. What was the context for the comment about your foot on her neck?
So if you go back and look at the tape, there was no malice intent, and several employees would tell you that it was just in the context of I had received multiple complaints for over a year about why and when our pool, the only pool in the city of South Fulton, was going to be renovated and opened. And and it was said that, look, I am, basically encouraging her or pressuring her to make sure that she works with staff to get that pool open as quick as possible, because the pool has been down for 2 years. It's the only pool in our city. Summer is approaching. We had a lot of seniors that used that pool for water aerobics. And then I could not give any updates to the community. We had council approve $1.7 million to restore the roof and the slide for the pool. And I wasn't getting updates. I have the documented emails where I kept asking, give me a project timeline. Give me, I just got that project timeline probably within 30 days ago on the projected time when that pool is going to be open. Our job as city council people is to formulate policy and also oversee budget. But we can't do that if we're not, and also communicate that information with our constituents. We can't do that if we're not getting the information. So to bring a tragic situation into that context that played out before America, that was totally inappropriate.
Was it inappropriate for you to say? I do remember watching that meeting, you did laugh, and some other people chuckled too, but at the very least, was it inappropriate to say in hindsight?
In hindsight, knowing that it was going to be taken out of context, I would have chosen a different way to say it. But again, that happened 4 months ago. I've had several pleasant conversations, one-on-one meetings with the city manager. Not one time did she say she was offended. She understood what context that was in. She understood. And so, again, I'm not perfect. I don't say that I'm perfect. And I'm very passionate about what I do. I work hard for my community. Majority of my residents will tell you that. I have to sometimes explain to my colleagues why this district is getting more money, because I have the most utilized park and recreation facilities. When our basketball courts have chains on the gates, and then I find out about it on social media, and I go to the leadership and ask, did you know about this? And I'm told no, but the entire council is being blasted all over social media. That's not fair. That's not fair to us, and that's not fair to our residents. If you go out there right now, we have chains on the gates of our basketball courts. And we didn't find out, and to find out those courts were in disrepair for 6 months, and we weren't told anything about it. We have money that we could have allocated to fix that problem. We got summer approaching, we got spring break approaching. If we want our kids to stay out of trouble, we got to make sure that we have facilities for them to use and programs.
I'll ask another question. I mean, I know you guys probably are very limited on what you can say in terms of litigation, but people are going to be like, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's been complaints of a hostile work environment. There is a federal lawsuit, and now you've got this additional complaint from the...
I will be very limited to what I can say. Read that statement, read that lawsuit in its entirety. What I will say, and that's all I'm going to say about this, I never had one conversation with the HR director, and there was a third-party investigation done that did not substantiate her claim. And again, I have, and I would like for you all to do an open record request for them, the grievances since 2021 up until now. The emails sent directly to this council about hostile work environment. There is at least 3 hostile work environment grievances. There are several employee complaints. I'm going to give you a list of employees that is willing to talk with you. You just heard our union president. The hostile work environment is not being created by Councilmember Williams and I. It's been existing for a very long time, and we have been quiet, and we've been trying to work through issues internally, and we have been trying to allow the administration to do their job, but we have had 3 park directors. We've had 3 CDRA directors. We have several turnover in finance, and when you read the exit interviews, requests for all the exit interviews since 2021, you will find majority of it is not because of city council relations with staff.
Right. And what I would like to add to what Councilwoman Willis has said is that what you are getting is what people want you to get. And the picture that is being painted is the picture that they want you to see. And unfortunately, because of what the charter says about how we cannot publicly disclose or discuss matters that touch on personnel, litigation, or real estate, we have had to remain silent while this picture has been painted. There's much that we could say, and I'm sure that there are people who want us to say it so that they can hit us with charter violations, but we will continue to maintain our confidentiality. And if people want to continue to leak things to you that they should not have and should not be leaking, they should know that we know who they are, we know what they're doing, We know how they're doing it. And eventually, the day is going to come when we are going to be able to speak on it.
Are there any more questions?
We're taking questions from the media, and I believe.
Back in 2021.
I can't hear you.
This is in regards to the forensic audit. This goes back to the 2021 election. We had candidates that campaigned on that. It was asked for when you all was sworn in. You mentioned why it wasn't done. Why wasn't that communicated to the residents? A lot of people are talking about this audit and why it wasn't done.
Well, so the forensic audit was not done because if you know anything about auditing, before you get to a forensic audit, you have to have an audit. A forensic audit is basically a search for criminal activity. If you're going to do a forensic audit, you need to know what you are looking for. You need to know where to look for it. You need to know who to look at. You cannot take a forensic audit and cast a wide net and go on a fishing expedition and hope that you find something that you can use. You start from the position of, we have an audit that indicates there may be activity that warrants a deeper dive. It has not been explained to residents because nobody has bothered to ask us. They have taken what they've been told and the narrative that's been created, and they've run with it. And they have not stopped to ask, why hasn't it been done? Because if they had done that, they would have gotten the answer. They just wouldn't have liked the answer that they got.
Mr. Huff, I'll get from the clerk the work session meeting, because we did have a auditor come in and give the council a education lesson on the different types of audits that government agencies conduct. And we did ask not for a forensic audit, because as my colleague thoroughly detailed, you just don't do a forensic audit over a whole city unless there's something that came from an audit that says something is wrong. What we did ask is for a compliance audit to be done on every department in the city so that we could see if it was any policies or best practices that we need to improve. And as a result from these compliance audits, if we saw anything that forensically needed to be audited, then we would have, as a council, addressed that. So far, we have only received a compliance audit from our Parks and Recreation Division.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. If you would like to stay, we will be having our URA meeting at 3:30 and our council meeting at a work session at 4 p.m. Again, if there's anybody who would like to reach out, I am happy and will willingly provide you with the full email